Welcome to my channel. Subscribe and enjoy my new stories every day. In the bustling heart of the city, amidst the cacophony of daily life, Leo Maddox found myself strolling through familiar streets, seeking solace in the routine walk that often cleared my mind. The day was like any other until a figure in the distance caught my eye. It was Viola, my wife, whose strides seemed unusually hurried. My curiosity piqued when she glanced around nervously before ducking into a quaint café. Compelled by a gut feeling I couldn't shake, I followed, stepping into the warm buzz of the café filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and pastries. My heart raced as I watched Viola greet a sharply dressed stranger with a familiarity that sent a chill down my spine. They chose a secluded corner, their heads leaning in close, laughter mingling with the clink of their coffee cups. Attempting to stay unnoticed, I grabbed a newspaper and settled at a table with a vantage point that allowed me to observe them without drawing attention. The waiter approached, but I waved him away, my gaze fixed on Viola and the stranger as they shared a moment too intimate for mere acquaintances. Minutes stretched into eternity. My mind raced with countless scenarios, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. They stood, and with a glance around, they slipped away. My heart pounded as I followed, reaching the corridor that led to the restrooms. Panic gripped me. What if something had happened to her? With trepidation, I pushed the door open, only to freeze at the sight before me. Viola, disheveled and flushed, was with the man, too close, too personal, in a way no husband should ever witness. The world around me blurred, the sounds of the café drowned out by the roaring in my ears. How could you, Viola? My voice was a hoarse whisper, barely audible over the sound of my crumbling world. She jerked back, her eyes wide with shock. Leo. It's not what it looks like, she stammered, hastily trying to compose herself. But the scene spoke louder than any of her feeble excuses. The betrayal was clear, the wound it left, irreparable. A surge of anger washed over me, red and hot, eclipsing the shock. I trusted you, Viola. Our vows, did they mean nothing? The hurt in my voice was palpable. The man, sensing the danger, muttered an excuse and hurried past me, leaving us in the suffocating silence of the aftermath. Viola reached out, tears streaming down her face, but I recoiled. There was nothing she could say to undo the sight burned into my memory. I'm sorry, Leo, please, her plea fell on deaf ears. The drive home was a blur, each mile stretching further into isolation. By the time I walked through our front door, my mind was made up. The love I had for her was tainted, replaced by a resolve as cold as the ring she had forsaken. The divorce papers were drawn up with a clinical detachment. Our interactions, once filled with warmth, were now transactions of necessity, each meeting a stark reminder of the divide between us. As I signed the last document, sealing the end of what we had, I looked up at Viola one last time. There was a sorrow there, a regret that mirrored my own, but it was too late. The paths we once walked together had irrevocably parted. That night, as I walked through the city once again, the streets felt different. They were emptier, echoing the void within me. But with each step, a resolve grew stronger. I would rebuild, move forward, not as the man who was betrayed, but as one who survived the tempest and walked out into the calm. The first rays of morning light filtered through the blinds, casting a stark, unwelcome brightness into the room. I hadn't slept, the haunting images of betrayal playing on a loop in my mind. As I sat on the edge of the bed, the weight of the empty space beside me pressed heavily against my solitude. It was in this sobering dawn that I decided not to let Viola's deception define my next steps. It was time for action, for making her understand the depth of her betrayal. I reached for my phone with a shaking hand, my thumb hovering over the contact list. There was one person I knew could give me the ammunition I needed, Marcus, a mutual friend who had always been more in Viola's confidence than mine. My finger pressed down, the ringing tone echoing the pounding in my chest. Leo. This is early, even for you, Marcus answered, his voice thick with sleep. Marcus, I need to know everything. About Viola and the man she's been seeing, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. There was a pause, a breath held and then released. Leo, are you sure? This is messy. I've never been more certain, I replied. I saw them yesterday, Marcus. I need to know who he is. Another pause, longer this time, then a sigh. His name is Adrian. Works in tech. They met at some conference a few months back. I didn't think she'd actually. Go on, I pressed, my grip tightening around the phone. They've been talking. A lot. Look, Leo, I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner. I absorbed the information, a cold calculation taking root. Thanks, Marcus. I needed to know, for my own closure. As the call ended, a plan began to form in my mind, one that required more than just confronting Viola or Adrian. This was about reclaiming my dignity, my life. The next few hours were a blur of activity. I met with a private investigator, laid out the evidence I had, and asked for everything they could find on Adrian. Money was no object, the truth was worth every penny. By late afternoon, I was back in the cafe where it had all come undone. Sitting with a coffee that grew cold untouched, I watched the door like a hawk. It wasn't long before Adrian walked in. Confident. Smug. Unaware. I stood, my approach steady as I reached his table. His eyes lifted, registering surprise as he recognized me from the photograph Viola kept on our mantel. Leo, right? Adrian's voice carried a hint of unease. You know who I am, I stated, not a question but a confirmation of his betrayal. We need to talk, Adrian. The color drained from his face as he nodded slowly, standing to follow me outside to a more private corner by the bustling street. I know about you and Viola, I began, the words sharp and clear. And I want you to know, from me, that you've ruined a marriage. How does that feel, Adrian? He hesitated, his eyes flicking away before meeting mine again. I never wanted to hurt anyone, he said weakly. But you did, Adrian. You did, I cut him off. I'm not here to make a scene. I'm here to tell you that it's over. You will end this affair, or the consequences will not just be mine to bear. Adrian's face showed the conflict, the realization of the gravity of his actions dawning on him. I'll end it. I never meant for any of this to happen. Make sure you do, I warned, turning away to hide the tremor in my voice. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about regaining control. As I walked away, the city seemed to come back into focus, the sounds and sights no longer muffled by the fog of betrayal. I had taken the first step in a journey that was far from over, but with each stride, I felt a piece of myself returning, stronger and more determined. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was ready to face it, armed with the truth and the resolve to emerge from this storm not just intact, but transformed. The city's pulse beats like a drum as I make my way back home, the early evening air crisp and tinged with the promise of rain. I'm fueled by a mixture of determination and dread, knowing what must be done next. It's time to confront Viola, to bring this charade to an unceremonious end. The front door of our apartment creaks softly as I push it open. The place is dim, the only light spilling from the kitchen, casting long shadows on the floor. I hear her before I see her, her voice, soft and hesitant, as if she's been waiting. Leo. Viola's figure appears in the hallway, her posture tense, an unreadable expression painted across her face. She knows why I'm here. We need to talk, I announce, my voice firmer than I feel. Without waiting for her response, I stride into the living room and sit down, my eyes fixed on the door, waiting for her to follow. She takes a seat across from me, wrapping her arms around herself defensively. Leo, I met with Adrian today, I cut in, watching her closely. The color drains from her face, her eyes widening in shock. You what? Her voice cracks, a mix of fear and surprise. I told him it's over, I continue, each word deliberate, calculated to gauge her reaction. I told him the consequences if it isn't. Viola swallows hard, her hands trembling slightly. I'm sorry, Leo. I never wanted you to find out this way. That doesn't matter now, I say coldly. What matters is what you're going to do next. How are you going to fix this mess you've made? Her eyes dart around the room, seeking an escape that isn't there. I'll end it. Completely. I'll resign from my job tomorrow, he won't be a part of our lives anymore. I nod, the plan already forming in my head. You'll do that, but there's more. You'll come clean to our friends and family about why we're divorcing. It's time everyone knew the truth about who you really are. Viola's face pales, her fear palpable. Leo, please, isn't that too much? Can't we just leave quietly? No, I snap, my voice rising slightly. You dragged our lives through the mud. It's only fair everyone knows why. We sit in silence, the tension thick between us. After a moment, Viola nods slowly, resigned. Okay, I'll do it. I'll tell everyone. Good. I stand up, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and sorrow. I'll be moving out by the end of the week. I suggest you find somewhere to stay in the meantime. As I head to the bedroom to pack a bag, my mind races with the implications of what I've just set in motion. This isn't just about retribution, it's about reclaiming my life, my integrity. The sound of Viola sobbing quietly in the living room reaches my ears as I zip up my suitcase. There's no joy in this victory, only the bitter taste of a necessary end. I leave the room without looking back, the door closing with a soft click behind me. The finality of that sound resonates deep within me, a solemn end to a chapter of my life that I had once thought would last forever. Now, armed with my resolve and the truth, I step out into the night, ready to face whatever comes next, knowing I've done all I can to mend the broken pieces of my past. The city looms around me, its lights flickering like the dying embers of my former life. The streets, once pathways to shared dreams with Viola, now guide me to my final act of retribution. My heart, once heavy with sorrow, now beats with a cold resolve. After leaving our shared apartment, I make my way to a small, nondescript building on the outskirts of town. The private investigator I hired days earlier meets me at the door, his face grim. I've got what you asked for, he says, handing me a thick envelope. The contents are damning, a detailed report on Viola and Adrian's affair, complete with photos and messages. But there's more, bank statements showing Viola funneling money from our joint accounts to a secret one she opened for Adrian. The betrayal cuts deeper, fueling the fire of my vengeance. Thank you, I say tersely, my mind already racing with plans. My next stop is a well-known local news blogger, someone with the reach to ensure the story of Viola's deceit goes public in the most humiliating way possible. We meet in a coffee shop, the buzz of the crowd a stark contrast to the darkness of my intentions. I want this story out, I tell the blogger, sliding the envelope across the table. Everyone should know what she's done. He leafs through the documents, his eyes widening. This will destroy her. That's the point, I reply coldly. The story goes live within hours. By the next morning, Viola's betrayal is the talk of the city. Her social media accounts are bombarded with hate, her professional reputation in tatters. But I don't stop there. Using the last of my savings, I hire a team of lawyers to ensure that Viola is left with nothing in the divorce. The house, our savings, I fight for it all. And the judge, swayed by the evidence of her financial deceit, rules overwhelmingly in my favor. But as I stand outside the courthouse, a free man vindicated by the law, the hollowness inside me grows. Revenge, I realize, is a double-edged sword. Days turn into weeks, and the initial rush of victory fades into a bitter aftermath. I see Viola once more during this time, at a café we once loved. She looks broken, a shell of the vibrant woman I married. Our eyes meet across the room, and the air thickens with unsaid words. You ruined me, Leo, she says when I sit down, her voice a whisper of despair. You did that to yourself, I reply, my voice devoid of warmth. I loved you, she insists, her eyes searching mine for a trace of the man she knew. Not enough, I say, standing to leave. Not enough to stay faithful. As I walk away, her sobs echo in my ears, a haunting melody of loss and regret. But there's no turning back. I've chosen my path, driven by a relentless desire for retribution. Months later, I hear news that shakes me to my core. Viola, overwhelmed by the fallout, took her own life, leaving behind a note filled with apologies and regret. The news hits me like a physical blow, the final weight of our tragic tale. In seeking revenge, I had hoped to find peace. Instead, I am left with a deeper wound, a stark reminder of the cost of hatred and betrayal. I realize too late that in my quest to punish Viola, I have destroyed myself as well. As I walk the city streets alone, the skyline a stark silhouette against the twilight, I understand the truth at last. There is no victory in vengeance. Only the ashes of what could have been, and the heavy burden of an empty future.